decided to take our time to look at the Ontario Reigns failure because it just made us sad. But we're finally going to talk about it. And we're going to take a look at men's worlds, which are in action, featuring some Kings and Reign players. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, happy Monday and happy Let's Talk About the Kings Day. You're listening to Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. We'll talk a little bit more about BetOnline later in today's show, but of course, it is Mini Kings Monday, and we're going to check back in on the Ontario Reign after their very disappointing loss to the Colorado Eagles in the playoffs, ending their season and really ending the hopes of any Kings player to accomplish anything in the postseason this year. We're going to take a look back at how that series went and how it went so poorly. And then we're going to check in on men's worlds because, whenever I said, oh, darn, we don't have any players to follow along with this year, I kind of didn't expect the Reign to get bumped out so quickly. So there are some Kings/Reign players over playing for their countries, and we'll talk about them today and whatever else comes up. And so we have our usual friend of the show, Mini Kings Monday guest extraordinaire. We've got Jay here to talk about the Kings and the Reign and whatever comes up, and we'll just start with the Reign. How did they blow it this badly?
Man, I have been thinking about this question for some time now. I do wish that we could have used our psychic powers for good and not evil. Obviously, we didn't do last Mini King Monday, but the week before that, we did talk about how if they're not careful, they're going to lose to Colorado, and they sure did do that. But I don't know. Is my not very helpful answer. The goaltending wasn't very good, which is not necessarily Matt Villalta's fault. I don't recall exactly when he ended up getting called up to the Kings for precautionary reasons, but I'm pretty sure Garrett Sparks was in net for at least one game, which, first of all, why? Second of all, I guess. So that didn't help. The offense, which has been, on fire basically all season, just decided to not, which, that happens in the playoffs sometimes. Look at the Florida Panthers, who basically scored well the entire season, and now they're like, we don't know how to do the goal thing. Just a real bad confluence of the goaltending coming back down to earth and also the offense coming back down to earth. And Colorado gave them fits all season, and apparently they just continued to do that, which is extremely, extremely frustrating.
Yeah, so I went and looked, and Matt Villalta played the first game, got pulled after allowing 7 goals because the first game, if you missed it, if you ignored it, the final score was 10-1, so not hot.
I thought it was 8-1, and then I looked and was like, no, it sure was.
There's more.
It sure was 10-1.
Jesus. Yeah. So Matt Villalta played most of that game. David Rinnick came in, obviously in a situation you didn't expect him to come in at, and did his best, but the team in front of him looked like garbage. Garrett Sparks played game number 2 and game number 3. So he finished out the series.
Don't understand.
Part of it was they didn't really have any other options because, Villalta could have played game 3. He was the backup technically. But Jacob Ingham had knee surgery, so he is done. I'm sure they just didn't want to feed poor David Rinnick to the wolves again. Lucas Perique was starting for his ECHL team in the playoffs, so they couldn't call him up.
I
They
mean,
had
they
John.
could,
Well, they could
but
have, but yeah. And John Lethemon is like the only other guy, and he backed up Sparks for game 2. So it's like they didn't have better options, but yeah, like even if they had gotten perfect goaltending, it doesn't change the fact that they scored a total of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 goals in 3 games, and most of those came in game 2.
yeah. Yeah, game 2 was really the only game of that series where I was like, "Man, this looks like the Ontario
Mhm.
Reign that I've watched all season." Like,
Yeah,
the first game, just piss poor.
yeah.
I
No,
don't
it
know
was
if you're gonna have to beep that, but just absolutely horrific
yeah,
effort from literally everyone.
yeah,
And game 3 was not quite as bad, but basically as bad.
yeah.
Like, just I don't I don't get it. I watched the game, and then I watched the highlights,
Mhm.
like, refamiliarize myself, and then I watched the game in full again, and I still don't understand how things went as wrong as they did this series. Like,
Yeah.
maybe they weren't good enough to beat the Eagles. They were good enough to win a game.
Mhm.
And maybe 2, I don't understand how this series did not go 5 games. Like,
Yeah.
just hockey, man.
Um, I looked and the Reign had 13 power play opportunities and scored once.
Yep, there you
So,
go, that's another
that's a
thing,
big
special
one.
teams. They and this is something we talked about on the most recent Mini King Monday. Their power
Mhm.
play was the best. It was historically good
Mhm.
in the regular season, and then, yeah, just if you're gonna draw that many penalties, like,
Yeah.
do something with it.
Right.
I assume their penalty kill was equally as dire, but, like, the power play is
Yeah.
like, that's where a lot of their success came from this season. They scored a
Yeah.
lot 5 on 5, but the power play was the real, like, you know, the real, like, the gem in their cap. That's not a thing. The
It is
feather in
now.
their. There you go. Um, mixing my weird fantasy metaphors.
Meh.
But, like, if your power play is such a big part of your success in the regular season,
Mhm.
then you gonna wanna do that in the playoffs as well, and just I think, yeah, just a weird, like, hockey is a voodoo nonsense
Yeah.
sport. Sometimes a goalie decides to turn into Dominic Hasek. Sometimes, you know, um, Zach Hyman, for example, has, like, 4 goals through the first 3 games of the Calgary-Edmonton
How?
series, which sure,
How?
why not? Like,
Course he
like,
does.
I love it. I hate it, but also, why the heck not? You know, hockey is weird. Playoff hockey is even weirder.
Yeah.
Um, and I think just you'd like to think that they could have overcome 2 out of
Mhm.
those 3 falling apart,
Yeah.
but having all 3, so the goaltending,
Mhm.
the goal scoring, and the special teams all being
Mhm.
bad, I think
Yeah.
a recipe for
What would
disaster.
happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
We'll,
Colorado's
yeah.
a good team.
Yeah.
Like,
And yeah, just hated it. Hated every second of all of these
mhm,
games that I watched. We'll talk a little bit more about the Reigns playoff end coming up after this. But first, I believe you have some information to tell us about ways to like stuff your body full of nutrition.
yeah, so if you, like me, are, a gremlin person who exists basically on, chicken nuggets and the occasional Built Bar, then I have got a product for you, and I use this literally every day. Um, I started using Athletic Greens because, like I said, I was basically eating exclusively chicken nuggets and drinking a lot of soda, and that's not good for your body, it's not good for your mind. I was super tired all the time, like, my gut health was just real bad. I was getting sick a lot. And Athletic Greens fixes all of these problems with just one early morning, easy to do thing. And with 1 scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. They support gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, aging, basically all of the things that you think that you might need to improve on. Athletic Greens will fix that for you. It is lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, gluten free. It costs you less than $3 a day, so you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. And Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews and are recommended by professional athletes and trusted by leading health experts. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health, arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It is just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That is it. There's no need for a bajillion different pills and supplements to look out for your health. It is, like I say, just one scoop in a cup of water. And to make it even easier, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Once again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
So looking back at the Reigns games, there was another thing that kind of stood out to me. And it goes along with the special teams nonsense and how that was bad. Is that you can't score when your best players are sitting in the box.
Mhm.
And game 2 was particularly egregious for that. Jared Anderson-Dolan was in and out of the box. Martin Firk took a 10-minute misconduct penalty at the end of the first period, so he was out for half of the second period, gets out of the box and literally takes a penalty on, like, the next shift. Um, Third period just kept seeing consecutive penalties from the Reign, including TJ Tynan getting a 10-minute misconduct for continuing an altercation about halfway through the period. So he was out for the entire rest of the third period and the beginning of overtime. So especially those two guys, Firk and Tynan, when they're your guys who you count on to make things happen, and they're sitting in the box. Same with the third period or the third game. Jared Anderson-Dolan had a penalty. Martin Firk took like a 4-minute penalty essentially for boarding and for roughing. Like, what are you going to do? It was very interesting in a bad way. I feel like to see, like, usually teams didn't get under the Reign's skin that much in the regular season, but for whatever reason, and I've had some people that I've talked to about this series say, well, Colorado played a little bit dirty. And I'm like, well, maybe they did, but it's your responsibility as a team to like not stoop to that and not keep putting yourself in situations where they're going to be able to take advantage of you on the score sheet. A team playing dirty doesn't mean you fire back by also playing dirty. It means you score goals whenever they get called on stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
And,
So I
like,
feel
we're
like
gonna
there's
talk
just,
about Worlds in a
yeah.
minute, but, like, that's a thing I noticed a lot. Obviously, I watched, not a ton of the Kings prospects
Mhm,
specifically in Worlds, but I did watch, obviously, my guys, Team GB, and they took a lot of
mhm.
retaliatory penalties. That's a word, sure, it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Um, and, so if someone, like, does a dirty hit or someone cross-checks you and you don't like it, like,
Mhm,
and this is something that always reminds me of, like, Marian Hossa, you know?
mhm,
Someone did something to Marian Hossa, he didn't retaliate. He
mhm.
laughed in their face and
Yeah,
then watched them skate to the box, you know?
yeah.
Like, that's, and I haven't looked at the, let's pull it up now, actually. In terms of, like, the penalties, like,
Mhm,
whether it was a bunch of, like, offsetting minors or whether it was, let's see. Yeah, roughing
mhm.
penalty, and a sportsman, and then, I mean, you get, like, tripping, high sticking, tripping,
Right.
tripping,
What happens?
like, those ones are more, I think, like not lack of discipline, but, like, it's hard to lose your temper and trip someone.
Right.
You know? Unless
Yeah.
you're like Duncan Keith, two hands swinging your stick at somebody's ankles.
Right.
But,
Right.
like, I'm more willing to forgive those kind of penalties than I
Mhm.
am you putting yourself in the box because you lost your temper
Right.
and kicked someone in the
Right.
face, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing as well, obviously, you don't want, like, Martin Ferk sitting in the box for 10 minutes
Right.
because he lost his temper, but also the other thing, killing penalties is a nightmare for momentum. You
Mhm.
don't get, your penalty killing lines are not the same as your regular lines. You have to kind of mix and match, and then if you're constantly in and out of the box, then you never get a chance to, like,
Mhm.
again, going back to that game, your top line, Jarrett Anderson-Dolan, Martin Ferk, and TJ Tynan.
Mhm.
Anderson-Dolan in the box. Anderson-Dolan
Mhm.
in the box again for 4 minutes. There, he's missing 6 minutes of the first period in this second game. Again, Martin
Mhm.
Ferk missing for the first 10 minutes of the second period, excuse me. Immediately takes a tripping penalty,
Yeah.
missing in the first. So he missed what, 12 minutes of the second
Mhm.
period, essentially. TJ Tynan, roughing penalty, 2 minutes, continuing altercation, 10 minutes. Again, that's 12 minutes of penalties.
Yeah. What's
At
you
what
can't
point do you
score.
put those guys back on the ice? Like,
Right. Yeah, especially like I feel like talking about the like don't let yourself get goaded into playing the way the other team wants you. The Tynan penalty particularly was like I was like, yes, you absolutely deserve this, because he basically just like jumped into like seemingly unprovoked, just like launched himself at these Eagles players, and like clearly something had happened that hadn't gotten caught before. Um, and that sucks. Like, every series you watch, every hockey game you watch, you can complain about officiating all you want, and especially in the AHL, maybe it isn't as great as we would want it to be, but yeah, okay, a call got missed, you're mad, it stinks. The correct answer is like not to go throw yourself at people and be mad about it. Like the correct answer is to score goals.
yeah,
So like that, and I feel like the discipline hadn't been like it's just something about the Eagles got under their skin because I feel like we didn't see this kind of nonsense. I would have expected that in the series against the Gulls, who they
I was
play
just
like
about to say,
8,000
yeah.
times a year.
But yeah, something about the Eagles just, I don't know,
Mhm.
it seemed to really, really bother them, and it's so frustrating because, like, when we've praised, especially TJ Tynan,
Mhm.
we've praised him all year for being a
Mhm.
team guy. Obviously, he's just won league MVP,
Mhm.
He is a guy that, like, you know what? I'm just gonna come out and say it. He knows better.
Yeah.
He knows better. He has been
Yeah.
around long enough to know how this works.
Yeah.
Like, you can't lose your temper because that's how I feel like I've lost track of how many times I have watched a player
Mhm.
get called on the second slash or the second
Yeah.
cross-check,
Yeah.
First one, it gets missed, and then
Mhm.
the ref calls the second one, and, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, how are you still surprised by this? This
Mhm.
happens literally every time,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if there's a scuffle and it draws the ref's eye, just in time to see the second penalty,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
And then, of course, they get mad that the other guy didn't get penalized. Well, guess what? They didn't see him. They saw you.
Yeah,
They saw
and,
you
like,
do the
that's
thing.
a legitimate grievance, I think,
Mhm.
and I could talk for days about how the NHL, the AHL, and the IIHF officiating is
Mhm.
bad and needs to be
Mhm.
rehauled in basically every single way, but, like, you gotta play the game the way the rules are said,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. If you
It's
don't like
not
the rules, change them.
Yeah, it's not, like, it's your problem, it's your fault.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not like you're like, "Well, yeah, he deserved to go to the box as well." Well, tough.
Right.
Tough. Like,
Right.
I don't have a word that's not
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
miserable here. Like, it's just so frustrating, especially I think it's more frustrating to watch that the Reign did this as
Mhm.
well. Like, I would have expected this from the Kings,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Because
I'm glad
especially
the
like
Kings made it to 7 games against the Oilers, but I
right.
would have expected this kind of complete breakdown nonsense from them. I expected better from the Reign. They were a better
Yeah.
team than this, and they
Yeah.
didn't deserve to lose, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they kind of
They did
hoisted
it.
it to their own downfall in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like you said, we'll talk about worlds in just a second, but this does kind of tie in because one of the things that you see so much in these series where it's, Canada versus, Kazakhstan or something. What ends up happening? Kazakhstan takes 1,000 penalties because they can't keep up. They're getting frustrated. They're taking the dumb like slashing penalties and everything, hooking penalties because they aren't as fast, And so you expect that from a team that is, a weaker team, or that, is going to have a problem keeping up. And that's not the Reign. And that's, I think, what has made this the most frustrating. I think that the other thing I wanted to touch on before we move to look at Worlds is, part of, especially in game two, I think why things got a little out of hand was there was that cross check in the second period against Alex Turcotte, which knocked him out of the game, would have knocked him out of the rest of the playoffs had the Reign gone on. Team confirmed he has a concussion, and they are concerned about him. This is his second concussion this season. He's had them before. He's had other health issues that have held him back, and so you have to imagine the Reign were frustrated in that game and in the next game because of what had just happened to their teammate. But again, the right way, and obviously, I certainly share that concern for Alex Turcotte, who I feel like has just had a really raw deal in starting his pro career. Just nothing has really gone right for him. But the right way to respect your teammate who just got knocked out of the game on a dirty hit that the player later gets suspended for isn't to lose your cool, it's to win the game. And the Reign didn't do that. So, sports, man.
Yeah, they were a mistake.
They were. We'll talk about some other potential mistakes coming up next when we take a look at men's worlds that are going on right now. But before we get to that, of course, BetOnline, our partners over there, continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. If you're watching the playoffs right now and you're, waiting for Florida to finish the choke, or waiting for Edmonton to Connor McDavid to score 14 more goals in his next game or something, if you're into any sorts of predictions like that, you can go to BetOnline, where you can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. I can't believe that the football is close to happening again, but we really are. BetOnline is, of course, your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. We're going to close today with looking at men's worlds. We do have a couple of Kings prospects who are over there. Well, they're not even prospects anymore. This is this is not the
No,
children.
they're adults now.
This is the full-on adults. We have a few Associated Kings players who are over there right now. Carl Grundstrom went over for Sweden. TJ Tynan went over for the United States. And Christian Kastelstol, who has been back and forth with the Reign and then with the ECHL, he is also over there with Norway. Spoilers, Norway hasn't really done anything, so he hasn't really done anything either. But, good for him for getting to go play for Norway. But I know you've been watching Worlds a little closer than I have. For your boys who have accomplished also, well, they've scored goals, which is plus.
Yeah.
What's
6
happening?
of them, in fact.
Hey,
6-goal goal. Actually, I think they scored 7 goals in 6 games, but
that's more goals than I've scored.
It's not nothing.
So what's going on over there in general?
Basically, the world is proceeding as you'd expect, except Canada lost to both Switzerland and Denmark, which is hilarious. The Americans also almost lost to someone embarrassing as well. I want to say Austria, which is, again, extremely funny. But in terms of Kings players or Kings prospects, or I don't know what TJ Tynan counts as. He's not really either of those things. He's the Kings organization.
He's a guy.
Carl Grundstrom has a goal and an assist in the 3 games that he's played so far, which is pretty good.
I hope he scored it by accident.
I didn't look this up. I should have seen who he scored against, because I bet it was Team GB, because the Swedes scored a bunch of goals in that game. And TJ Tynan appears to be continuing on his usual trick of just scoring an assist every game, at least one. And he's got 2 assists in the 2 games he's played so far. Again, nothing super groundbreaking from either of those guys, but I would expect, hang on, let me pull up the standings for Worlds, because I had them open, but unfortunately, as you know, tabs. I believe Norway is probably not advancing because Norway.
Yeah,
Um,
Norway.
but as far as I'm concerned, Sweden, I believe, is at the top of their group. Bum, bum, bum.
And they've been historically pretty good at this. I feel like Sweden,
Mhm.
Finland have always put together really strong teams for men's worlds. It's always really funny whenever, I mean, we always expect Team USA to blow it in some way or another. That's
Yeah.
just their lot
Oh,
in
would you
life.
like to know something extremely
Yes,
hilarious?
yes, I love extremely
Would
hilarious
you like to
things.
know? So, okay, here we go. Group A for Worlds is comprised of Italy, Kazakhstan, France, Slovakia, Canada, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. Would you like to take a guess of what place Canada is finishing the group stages in?
I mean, given the fact that you said it's really funny, I'm gonna go with fourth.
You are correct.
That was
Um,
absolutely a guess. I did not cheat.
I
I
actually
promise
think
it was a
I
guess.
actually think they have one final game to play. I don't know who it's against, but Canada is losing. Well, they're fourth currently, and I think it's probably unless they lose in regulation, Slovakia wins in regulation, they will be advancing to the next stage. But they are currently being beaten in the standings by Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland. Switzerland have gone a perfect 6-0 so far in this
Has
tournament.
has Timo Meyer scored all their goals? Because I feel
I can
like
only assume so.
he probably has.
Um, I should look that up. But to drag back to their vague Kings stuff, Sweden and the USA are currently looking to advance. Sweden is basically locked in to advance to the next. They're second in Group B. USA is currently fourth, 2 points ahead of Latvia. So they have one more game. They could bottle it, but I think it's probably pretty likely that both Tynan and Grunstrom will be making it to the next stage. Norway is unlikely to. Yeah, Norway is unofficially eliminated from being able to advance to the next stage. They went 5-1, and nope, that's a lie. They went 1-1-4.
Huh?
Yeah,
Huh?
which is not nothing.
Yeah.
But they finished seventh in their group, so unfortunately, I believe this might be the end of the road for Christian Kasasul and his international season. But things are looking pretty good for Tynan and Grunstrom. I would expect Grunstrom to medal, just
Mhm.
knock on wood. I don't know that the Americans will make it past the knockout stages. I kind of
Yeah,
hope they don't. It'll be
I don't
funny,
trust them. Like,
but
they every year they blow it, so I don't trust them anymore.
yeah. Well, they're in a really strong group. It looks like they'll probably be facing Finland, who obviously are the
True.
reigning
Yeah.
gold medalists.
Yeah, that's bad.
And then they will have to face one of Sweden or Czechia
Yeah,
before.
that's both bad.
So,
Yeah.
um, as good as TJ Tynan is, I think the Kings' most likely hope for a medal at Worlds is actually Carl Gronstrom, which is
Yeah.
extremely funny
Yeah.
because as much as I like Carl Gronstrom, he's not who I think of when I think of like
No.
overwhelming success.
Yes. I do love that he did go to Worlds because I mean, out of anyone in the playoffs for the Kings, he was one of the guys who, like, caught my attention the most and actually was making things happen. And I think really, this season he'd been kind of the odd man out, healthy scratch a lot. I think he really showed during that playoff run that he deserves a spot on this team, especially with Dustin Brown, retiring. Someone needs to fill that human bowling ball role, and Carl Grunstrom does really good at it. So I'm glad he went to Worlds and is getting a chance to play some more, and yeah, hopefully take home a medal.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, it will also be really hilarious. Also, he's not who I think of when I think of Swedish Kings players who would go
I
on to
was very
represent their
surprised that
country.
Adrian Kempe did not make the trip
Oh,
over. But
he's hanging out on
he's
the beach, flipping his hair and getting
yeah, which I
tan.
mean you can't blame him.
Yeah.
Although the weather in Tampere is apparently very nice at the minute. I think the other thing as well, just to kind of tack onto the Carl Grunstrom of it all. In a way, I think Drew Doughty missing from these playoffs and like missing the tail end of the season has really shown the Kings what they have
Yeah.
in the cupboard that is not, because like how do you evaluate your decor without Drew Doughty is
Mhm.
to take Drew Doughty out of it,
Yeah.
and yeah, they lost, but I don't think anyone was expecting
Mhm.
them to take it to 7,
Right.
and it was the Oilers that forced game 7, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
The Kings were up 3-2, and then the
Yeah.
Oilers made it 3-3, and then obviously they won
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
game 7. But like, if you told me that the Kings would be up
Mhm.
3-2 in the series
Right.
against the Edmonton Oilers, so I think like overall, and this is something that we've talked about a little bit on the show
Mhm.
before, is overall this has kind of been an overwhelming success
Yeah.
of a season for the
Yeah.
Kings. Like they are ahead of schedule in
Mhm.
their quote unquote rebuild. But like the defense core, I think I was especially impressed with
Yeah.
because
It
my personal feelings about Drew Doughty aside, how do you fill a role like Drew
right.
Doughty? Like, he plays a bajillion minutes.
Mhm.
He's still a fairly competent puck moving defenseman, so it's not like you can put some defensive stay at home guy there and expect
Right.
the same results. So you kind of have to figure out what you've got. And,
Yeah.
between Grunstrom, Sean Dursey, Mikey Anderson is still. I don't know if Mikey Anderson's actually very young or if he just has kind of that baby face.
He's pretty
But,
young.
um,
He's still, like, early 20s, I think, so
yeah.
yeah,
And, even guys like Jordan Spence, I think
Mhm.
they really kind of trial by fire. And I think
Yeah.
they obviously they didn't get the result they wanted, but I think they made a pretty good showing
Yeah.
of, the Connor McDavid of it
Mhm.
all.
Yeah. I mean, especially considering right now what Edmonton is doing to the Flames,
Mhm.
who everyone thought was going to just, everyone was like, "Oh, the Flames have this one." Edmonton has won after like a ridiculous first game where no one decided to play defense or goaltend. Edmonton's won games 2 and 3. They Edmonton looks great. Like I can't feel bad at all about the Kings losing because Edmonton, like, hate to say anything nice about them, but they actually look really good right now.
Yeah. I
So,
also think I don't know if this is still the case, and I hate that this is the case, but last time I checked, Mike Smith was the best goalie in the
yeah,
playoffs in terms of like goals saved above expected. Like,
yeah,
which bonkers.
yeah.
What timeline are we living in?
He has a 933 save percentage. Mike Smith.
Who allowed this? How did this happen?
Like, literally, he's up there with like Vasilevsky.
Yeah.
Um, and
God, I don't want to
somehow
live in a
somehow
world.
Auntie Ranta has like also. I mean,
Okay, listen, Auntie Ranta
I mean, I
is
love him, but
perfect, and I'm so glad. Like, I hate that Freddie Anderson is injured. I love that he's getting a chance to show the world that actually he is a good goalie if he can stay
yeah,
healthy for longer than
yeah,
5 minutes. Um, like putting aside the fact that this is we've gone off the rails. We
yeah,
lasted
of course,
33 minutes,
that's
but we've
fine.
gone off the rails now.
Yeah.
Um, if it was not for the fact that Connor McDavid was scoring at a
Mhm.
historic point
Yeah.
pace, like, are we ready to live in a world with Conn Smythe winner Mike Smith? Like,
Oh, no. No, I hate it.
this is the
Yeah,
darkest timeline.
no.
Luckily, Connor McDavid's
Yeah,
going to finish the playoffs with like 56 points. Uh,
right, yeah. He right now, he has 23 points in 10 games.
yeah. The year Sidney Crosby won the Conn Smythe, which I want to say was 2016, he had 20 points in
All of it.
19 games or
Yeah,
something. Meanwhile, Connor McDavid is
yeah.
like best player in the world. Best
Right.
player in the world.
It feels like a situation where if Edmonton were to go to the Stanley Cup final, even if they lose, it feels like the rare case where the
It's
losing team could
it's
be
going to
the
be the Ron
Conn
Hextall
Smythe.
of it all. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. So, yeah, I can't feel bad,
I mean, I
because
can and I
Edmonton
will,
well,
but
yeah,
watching
but,
them
like
dismantle the Flames has made me feel a little better about
mhm,
the
yeah,
Kings losing in 7.
yeah. So, cool. Um, I think I think that covers it. We've talked about the rain making us sad. We've talked about Alex Turcotte being hurt, making us sad. We've talked about worlds existing. They don't make us sad yet. And I think we're good. So that's been it for today. If you want to hear more from Jay or just hang out on the internet, where can folks find you?
If you can hear me over the noises that my dog is making, you can find me at _Jacob Foster on Twitter, where you can see pictures of said dog when he's being cute and not yelling at me. JAKOBFORSTER. If you're watching on YouTube, it's right down here at the bottom of the screen. You can also, I can't in good conscience recommend paying attention to the Columbus Blue Jackets, but if you'd like to, Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available everywhere you can get Locked On Kings, including YouTube. And I think that's about it. I'm going to go kill the dog. I'm not going to kill the dog. For legal purposes, that was a joke.
You're going to smother him with hugs. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. The show's on Twitter at Locked On LA Kings. Also available wherever you get your podcasts and on the YouTube. Like I've said before, we're going to have some off-season content coming up, including some tributes to Dustin Brown. So keep an eye out for how you can participate in that. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.